Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup 2020 Week 11 results. So it's been an interesting week, hasn't it? We've seen a lot of different comps. We've seen Dive, we've seen Sombra Tracer, we've seen Sombra and other heroes alongside it. We've seen May Reaper, we've seen Orisa Sigma. We've seen all sorts. And we've also seen some really weird matches. We've seen some weird results. And we've seen, I think, tilt as well from one of the teams in particular. But let's get into these results then. And we start off with the Atlanta Reign taking on the Washington Justice. Now, the Washington Justice had an appalling week last time out. Atlanta Reign have looked fairly consistent with them being in that chasing pack. They're going after the likes of Philly Fusion at the moment, Seoul Dynasty, and maybe Shanghai. But Atlanta Reign, they are definitely a step above the Washington Justice, and in this match it showed, with the Atlanta Reign getting a 3-0 victory over the Washington Justice. The Washington Justice, they didn't look as bad as they had been looking, especially when they played last week, but they are not the caliber to be competing with the likes of the Atlanta Reign. The Atlanta Reign did outclass the Washington Justice, but there were some glimmers of hope for the Justice side, and they certainly didn't look as bad as some of the, probably the worst team in this league. But Atlanta Reign, very good play from Edison this week, very good play from Sharp as well. And the Reign look on course to be one of those teams challenging for that top 6 playoff spot, which is exactly where they want to be. To be quite honest, it doesn't make a massive amount of difference if you finish first. As long as you get in that top 6, you're in those automatic playoff spots. And that is what the Reign will be targeting for this season. So, really good win for the Reign. Justice, I wouldn't be too upset about it. If you can play like that against some of the worst teams in the league, then you will get results. But there is still work to do for Washington. Moving on then, we had the battle for LA. Los Angeles Gladiators taking on the Los Angeles Valiant, and this is where things get a little bit weird. So, this was a weird match. It ended 3-2 to the Gladiators, but it was not straightforward. So the Gladiators take a 2-0 lead into half-time, and everything's looking pretty, what you would call normal, I suppose, with the Gladiators looking like a better team than the Valiant. But the Valiant were running a very interesting comp. They were running KSP on the Ashe. He was literally just playing Ashe the whole time, pretty much. And then you'd have Shax, and he would play Torbjorn, Tracer. He'd play a variety of heroes, but most of the time he was playing the Torbjorn. And it was a surprise to see Shax, but again, there isn't too much room for KSF in this meta where we didn't have McCree or Widowmaker for him to pop off on. So Shax seemed like a better option for the utility sort of side of things. But the Gladiators took a 2-0 lead into the half-time, and then the Valiant started to turn things around. On maps 3 and 4, the Gladiators looked horrible. The coordination wasn't there, there was some really weird hero picks, and honestly, it just looked like the Gladiators had tilted. Massively. Which is very odd considering they were leading the match 2-0 at the time. And the Valiant bring it back to 2-2. Off brilliant play by KSP and Shax and actually the whole team. But eventually the Gladiators see out a 3-2 victory on the last map. But afterwards on Twitter there was some things blowing up about how the Gladiators felt hard done by. They felt like they were going up 8 versus 6. And, I mean, it's a valid point, right? But every team in this league right now is having to deal with a Torp turret. That's just the way it is. You get your Lucio kills the turret. That's the Lucio's job, if you're running a Lucio. Against Ashe, well, the reason you were playing against Bob so much is because the Ashe was getting so much value. That is on you, Gladiators, to shut the Ashe down. Not because the game is, oh my god, we're playing against another member of a team because they've got Bob. Well, yes, that's the idea of an ultimate, but KSP was getting Bob so much because he was getting so much value on the Ashe. So, it's up to you, Gladiators, to shut Ashe down. It was really weird from the Gladiators. Really, really weird. And they are lucky to see out that victory. Valiant, they could have taken that very easily. And I think a lot of it was down to Space. I think Space was really, really good during that match. And he really did I think he made the difference for the Gladiators there. I don't think they would have won it without space. But yeah, really weird match. Really weird match. Go back and watch the highlights if you haven't seen it, because yeah, I don't think I've ever quite seen an Ash get so much value. But Gladiators certainly, something went wrong in maps 3 and 4. But things get weirder because we have the Florida Mayhem versus Paris Eternal next. And, well, remember the last time we had this sort of hero pool? It was in week 5, we had Widowmaker and McCree banned. And what happened during that hero pool? Well, Paris Eternal played Houston Outlaws, and the Paris Eternal got battered by the Houston Outlaws. And the Paris Eternal got battered by the Florida Mayhem. This is a 3-0 win for the Florida Mayhem. I don't think anyone could have seen this coming. And questions to be answered, Paris Eternal. These sorts of losses are going to cost you in the long run. I have no doubt about that. They will cost you in the long run. That sort of loss can mean a difference between 6th and 7th in the league. It can mean a difference between playoffs and play-ins. This is the sort of thing that if you want to be a big team, which the Paris Eternal, without a doubt, with their new coaching on it, with their new players, are aiming to be, this is the sort of loss you cannot afford. The Florida Mayhem were very good for their win, don't get me wrong. Very impressed with the set plays between Fate and Chris and Yaki. But again, the Paris Eternal in this match looked a bit lost, looked a bit off sorts. Well, a bit off sorts, they lost 3-0 to the Florida Mayhem. But this can't happen if the Paris Eternal want to be a top 6 team. And they're now on a 5-3 record, I think, something like that. So this has not been a good week for the Paris Eternal, and they need to sort this out. They cannot be going down to losses like this every time that Widowmaker and McCree is banned, because it's probably going to happen quite often because they are the most often used hit scats. So yeah, sort it out, Paris. Not been a good week if you're an Eternal fan. But moving on, and we have Boston Uprising taking on the Toronto Defiant. So Boston Uprising, without a doubt, are the worst team in the league. If you saw the video the other day, I'm sure you all know that. And Toronto Defiant have been... They started off well, but have been getting poorer, in my opinion. And it kind of follows the trend that we saw last season with the Toronto Defiant. They had a really good stage 1, and then just kind of... It fell off towards the end. And this game is an interesting one. So we started out on Ilios well, and you know you're in for a match when it takes over 2.5 minutes for the point to be capped at the first attempt. It took over 2.5 minutes for the point to be capped. We had a Nano, a Lucio barrier, a Diva bomb, Hammond mines, May ults, Reaper ults, EMPs, Tracer bombs. They were all up or used before the point was even capped. That shouldn't be happening. That just shouldn't happen. I don't want to see that again. But Boston Uprising do end up winning Ilios, but it goes 3-1 in the end to Toronto Defiant. The Toronto Defiant should be expecting to win over the Boston Uprising. But another thing is, the Toronto Defiant shouldn't be making it as difficult as it was to beat the Boston Uprising. I expected the Toronto Defiant to come into this and 3-0 the Boston Uprising and look much better than the Uprising, but they weren't. At times they looked much better than the Uprising, but at times it looked like it could be pretty even. And that is worrying for Toronto, I'm not going to lie. This is a team that I was calling at the start of the season, perhaps gatekeepers to the play-ins. Not on this performance. Even though it's a win against Boston Uprising, not on this performance. Because that sort of performance, you will probably end up losing to the likes of the Houston Outlaws. So it's a week where you've got the win you needed, Toronto. And I'm not going to take that away from you. But it's not been the best week. Boston Uprising, what can I say that hasn't been said before? New team, please. Moving on, and we had the Dallas Fuel taking on the San Francisco Shock, and yeah, 3-2 to the San Francisco Shock. By no means easy for our champions, and I want to give big commendation to the Dallas Fuel this week. I have been perhaps overly critical of the Fuel in the past, because they have always been a team that have we've hyped them up, we've looked at them, they've got good players, and then they've let us down. And it must be awful to be a Fuel fan when that happens. But this, even though it was a loss, this was a good display from the Dallas Fuel. I said in the preview video that if Dallas Fuel could make this match close, then we have got an improvement for the Dallas Fuel on our hands. And we have certainly got that. It swung like a pendulum at times. San Francisco Shock full held Dallas on Hanamura, but Dallas Fuel got a 3-0 on Numbani against San Francisco Shock and full held them on there, which is fantastic. Full holding the San Francisco Shock and getting all 3 points on your attack, that's really, really good. Dallas Fuel, I'm impressed. I am impressed with the Dallas Fuel. I don't say it very often. And if they can translate this sort of performance they've had against the San Francisco Shock to other matches, then the future looks bright for this Fuel side. I just hope they can reach some sort of consistency. Doha and Decay are really hitting the ground running now. We're seeing improvements from Closer and Crimzo, and Gamsu is starting to pick up, Note is starting to pick up. Things feel like they're starting to fall into place for this Dallas Fuel squad. So, please Dallas, let's give something for these Dallas Fuel fans to cheer about. Let's give some good news about the Dallas Fuel. Let's look up, and I think the Dallas Fuel are improving. And in the long term, I don't see why this Fuel side can't be a play-ins team. And with a little more improvement, perhaps a signing, I don't see why this Fuel side can't challenge the top 6. They have the ability to. The DPS line is star-studded for this Dallas Fuel side. Doha has been fantastic in the previous 2 weeks. So, Dallas Fuel. The stonks are rising. The stonks are rising for the Dallas Fuel. But it is early days, and I just hope, I pray, that the Dallas Fuel don't let us down. Because I've got some power rankings that I'm going to be doing very soon, and I think Dallas Fuel might be trending upwards. Moving on to the games from China then, because for some reason the Overwatch League decided to have a really weird schedule this weekend, which meant that the 4 Chinese games were the last games of the weekend. We started off with Chengdu Hunters taking on Guangzhou Charge, and this will be a 3-0 win for the Chengdu Hunters. Hunters have had a good week this week despite their game against the Shanghai Dragons, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the Guangzhou Charge, again, it's been this thing of, one minute they look up, next minute they look down. It's really, really weird what's going on in the Chinese region. But I think what we can say from this week is that the Chengdu Hunters have benefited from the hero pools, and the Chengdu Hunters are improving, which is good to see. Moving on then, we had the Shanghai Dragons taking on the Hangzhou Spark. Shanghai Dragons, after this week, you definitely have got to say that they are the best team coming from China right now. And next week will be incredibly interesting for Shanghai because they were taking on Seoul Dynasty. And that is going to be a big teller for who is going to be fighting at the top of this league. But Shanghai Dragons will get a 3-0 win over the Hangzhou Spark. And I'm not too surprised about this. The Hangzhou Spark are not the team they were last season. Or, to put it in another way, they are the team they were last season. But that's the problem. They haven't really progressed anywhere. They've kind of stagnated, other teams have got better, and the Hangzhou Spark find themselves lower down the league than they'd like. Shanghai Dragons though, again, really good week for them. They are really finding some momentum, really finding their feet, and they are starting to not drop maps, which is really good from the Dragons' point of view. Moving on though, in the Guangzhou Charge taking on the Hangzhou Spark. It's a very bad week for the Spark this week. Guangzhou Charge get a 3-1 victory here. It's a good bounce back from the Charge after their bad loss against the Chengdu Hunters. But Hangzhou Spark, it provides more questions that need to be answered. I mean, we have seen good plays from the likes of Godsby, but it's not consistent enough, in my opinion, and Hangzhou Spark are now, I mean, there is a merry-go-round going on in China, you know, with the Chengdu Hunters, Guangzhou Charge and Hangzhou Spark. Shanghai Dragons have finally found their way out of that merry-go-round and seem to be stabilizing and getting more consistent results, but it's still all over the place with Hangzhou and Guangzhou, and it very often depends on the hero pool, on who succeeds. And honestly, this week I thought the hero pool would actually favour the Hangzhou Spark. I was wrong. Guangzhou Charge adapted really well, and again, Nero was really, really good for the Guangzhou Charge, and they see out the victory here. But lastly, we had the Chengdu Hunters taking on the Shanghai Dragons. I did say it was a very good week for the Dragons this weekend. Another 3-0 victory over the Chengdu Hunters here will seal out a 6-0 week for the Shanghai Dragons. Can't ask much more from that. And the Shanghai Dragons are starting to look like a team that could be up with the Phillies and the Souls of this world. And that's why I am talking about the game between Shanghai Dragons and Seoul Dynasty next week being such a big teller for what's going on. So, Chengdu Hunters, I wouldn't be too worried about that. They were still good play. And someone who I'm actually really impressed with from the Chengdu Hunters this week, despite the loss against the Shanghai Dragons, is Ameng. Because we have seen a side of Ameng this week which we haven't seen before. His flexibility is getting much better. We know he's got a decent Orisa. We know how good his Wrecking Ball is. But now he's showing us the Winston. Something that Ameng really didn't show at pro level play. But now he's playing it. He's played it a lot this weekend and he's doing very well. So I am really impressed with Ameng this week for the Chengdu Hunters. Despite their 3-0 win, then 3-0 loss, they are going up against the Shanghai Dragons. Not a lot of people are going to be able to get past them. But that rounds us off for this week. We will take a look at the standings to finish off this video. And at the top, we still have the Seoul Dynasty, who will be in action next week, as I have mentioned, back in the Asian region now. So it should be really interesting to see them go up against some teams they haven't faced this season. And it should be very interesting. Philadelphia Fusion in that second place, but they are getting hunted by the Shanghai Dragons right now, which is really interesting. New York are still in fourth, and they will be back in action next week, which is really good to see New York in action next week. It still asks the question, oh, London Spitfire, where are you? You're meant to be in Korea, but you are not playing. Yes, they're going to play early May London Spitfire, but I don't know what the delay is about for them. But in fifth, we still have the Atlanta Reign. We're going to see Atlanta Reign take on the Fusion next week, which should be a great game. San Francisco Shock in sixth, London in seventh. They've actually maintained that place, London, even though they haven't played, which is very interesting. It shows how much the merry-go-round in the league is happening right now. Paris Eternal in 8th, that's not too good. Vancouver Titans down in 9th. Well, Vancouver Titans. I might have to make a solo video on the Vancouver Titans before much longer if social medias of the players are anything to go by. If you don't know what I mean, you might want to take a trip around the social medias of the Vancouver Titans players because, all is not well at the team from Vancouver. In 10th, we have the Los Angeles Gladiators, 11th, Guangzhou Charge, 12th, Toronto Defiant, actually moving up Toronto Defiant right now. 13th, Florida Mayhem, 14th, Hangzhou Spark. Hangzhou falling down that league right now. Houston Outlaws in 15th, Chengdu in 16th, and I think if Chengdu continue to play like they are, they will get higher than that. Dallas Fuel in 17th, Los Angeles Valiant down in 18th, and Washington Justice in 19th, with Boston, guess what, propping up the league in 20th. So, that rounds us out for this week, and next week is going to be an interesting one. The Hero Pool is... yeah, the Hero Pool video is going to be a very interesting one, because the Hero Pool this week is very bad for a multitude of reasons, but that's for another video. And also the fixtures of next week will be very interesting as well. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.